there's a big difference between AI as an assistant, kind of more like a tool, right? Versus a companion. So for example, older high schoolers, I think, and I think most people believe, should learn how to use tools like ChatGPT for their future careers. And I'm very specific about older high schoolers, by the way. But we're seeing the same platforms being used for emotional support and intimate relationships.
Yeah.
So should we be drawing a clearer line between AI as a productivity tool versus AI as a relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difficulty in drawing a line because things get like so blurry. There was a recent, or I guess over the summer, Anthropic released a really interesting study showing that like they, the vast majority of use is about like work, rewrite my email, etc. But like 3% was about like affect, feelings, right? And of that a large fraction was, and that sounds like not very much, but you think of that in the context of all interactions, right? It's actually quite a lot, right? And so like a sizable fraction of that was like about like talking about interpersonal problems, right? And so is that an assistant? When does that blur into relationships? I think a little hard to say, which I think makes this like an interesting problem and really challenging.
Yeah.
That said, right, I think, right, it's like that the objectives associated with those two things are really quite different, right? An assistant might be really good for over fairly short amounts of time helping you with certain tasks, right? Helping you with writing, helping you with some like mathematical thing you have to do, some coding thing you have to do, versus like these sorts of longer term relationship things where a good friend might help you achieve certain goals, right? Or learn more about the world or yourself, right? And that's very different. That's a very different thing to optimize for. So you have to make that distinction, because I think that like if you then confuse one for the other, and it's easy to, because over the short term it might look like it's doing a good job at like serving as a friend. You're right. It might over the longer term, which is a maybe hard thing to optimize for.
Yeah.
It might not be doing a great job, and it's harder to engineer and harder to diagnose problems with. That's not to say you're right. I mean, and I think that's not even getting into the problems of like, well, what are consequences of using it, for like friendship, relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I guess where I go with this is like, is it appropriate to talk to your actual assistant about your feelings? Like, to me, that there should be a distinction there.